possessed nothing, not even a last name, and his only belonging was his given name. Yet people refused to call him by it. Instead, they ridiculed him, labeling him as worthless or comparing him to a weed. As he grew older, people began referring to him with intimidating titles such as Spear Demon and Venomous Snake Spear. Armed only with his spear, he overcame every opponent, leaving a trail of blood behind him, even when there was no one left to fight by his side. The protagonist, now labeled as the villain of the spear, wandered aimlessly, his body draped in tattered, threadbare clothing. His daily prize amounted to nothing beyond the usual bland serving of potatoes. The endless battlefield was the one place that ever truly felt like home. As the story moves to the present, approaches a small crowd of frightened individuals, his spear stained with fresh blood. The soldiers assigned to confront him are paralyzed with terror, unable to believe their eyes, appears more monstrous than human as he calmly advances. Several of the men begin to shake uncontrollably, some even losing control of their bladders out of sheer fear. The commander attempted to rally the group, raising his voice to remind them that they faced only one opponent. He shouted for everyone to rush forward. The entire pack lunged forward, aiming their spears directly at the hero. Sprang upward, his body soaring above the battlefield. With unwavering resolve, he brought his spear down in a ruthless motion, piercing the commander's skull in a single lethal blow. The sight of their leader collapsing sends waves of fear through the group, causing chaos to erupt among them. Despite their frantic attempts to attack, their wild swings and thrusts are fueled by sheer desperation. Without exception, each person eventually falls and becomes just another lifeless body on the field of war. Against all odds, the hero manages to endure the fierce confrontation. Despite his efforts, his body was pierced by numerous arrows, each one protruding from his flesh. The weight of the grudges and curses from those he had killed burdened him deeply, pressing down on him until he ultimately fell and died. As his thoughts began to slip away, he questioned whether everything had always been destined to turn out this way, or if fate itself had malfunctioned and turned against him. The tale, however, continues, for rather than disappearing, experienced a sudden shift in reality, as he was reborn and transported to an earlier era. He suddenly realizes he is standing amidst a dense forest. He quickly realizes that, unlike some reincarnations, he has not returned to the powerless state of infancy. As he gazes into the mirror, his reflection reveals the youthful features of his teenage years. He realizes with certainty that this was the period in his life when his only role was running errands for others. Suddenly, he noticed a sound nearby and cautiously approached the source. He comes across a caravan, being ambushed by bandits hidden among the trees. At the same time, members of the Howling Tiger Escort Bureau fought desperately to keep their opponents at bay. The boy, upon being reborn, immediately found himself thrust into the chaos of a battlefield, frustration brewing within him at having no choice in the matter. At that moment, a towering figure emerged from the shadows behind him. The large bandit demanded to know whether he was the escort master responsible for protecting the group. Gazes directly at him, catching the subtle quiver in his eyes. This clearly indicates that, much like the majority of troublesome creatures in the forest, this one lacks experience as well. Sweat trickled down the bandit's cheeks while he yelled a trembling threat to wipe out everyone from the escort bureau, then lunged forward in attack. The pattern of his actions made it easy for others to anticipate his next step. Without hesitation, grabs his spear and thrusts it directly into his opponent. Some believed that the young man's former reputation as a war hero had faded over time. His skills in martial arts still endured, and for him that was all he needed. He remembers a time when people looked down on the martial art he devoted himself to. People referred to it as the demonic martial art technique, yet he had no choice but to use it, as it was the only method he knew. With a bandit impaled on his spear, he continued to move ahead until another opponent appeared. Without warning, the entire group sprang forward, launching a surprise assault. The second bandit curled his lips into a smug grin, convinced that his attack had hit its mark. His self-satisfied expression fades quickly, as his premature celebration leads to his downfall, costing him his life. Ridiculed their belief that an ambush could succeed with only two insignificant bandits. Without a moment's pause, he attaches this new addition to the tip of his spear too. Once he impaled the bandits on his spear, stacking them like pieces of grilled chicken on a skewer, he at last sensed the satisfying heft of the weapon, finding it exactly to his liking. The mention of the bureau instantly pulls his thoughts back to memories from the past. He moved with composure, weaving his way through the gathered bandits. At the sight before them, uneasiness and nervousness spread among them all. At that moment, an enormous man moved to the front of the group and announced in a booming voice that he led the bandits who inhabited the forest. Responded with nothing more than a gentle smile, a gesture that only intensified the bandit boss's growing anger. The enraged boss lunged toward the boy, swinging his weapon in a reckless arc. Despite the attack, effortlessly out of harm's way, he ridicules him, comparing his behavior to that of a timid rat whose only response is to flee. The young man silently admires the larger man's strength, impressed by how he manages to support such a powerful physique. He mocks the other person, pointing out that this is the extent of their achievements. Following this, with just one swift and powerful blow, he manages to defeat the self-proclaimed muscular boss, ending the fight once and for all. A wave of icy fear swept through the bandits, making each of them shiver uncontrollably. Several of them dropped to the ground in fear, convinced that the boy before them was a heartless beast. At the same time, notes to himself that his spear continues to feel frustratingly light in his hands. To solve the problem, he quietly places a third piece of barbecue onto his skewer. The terrifying scene throws the bandits into utter chaos, overwhelming them with fear. The group quickly dispersed in fear, shouting that they had just seen a terrifying creature. At that exact moment, the spear demon made his return to the world once again. To the terrified bandits, nothing was more horrifying than having such a monstrous figure blocking their escape. The young man headed toward where the escorts continued to fight desperately against the attacking bandits. For a brief moment, it appears as though they are winning. Without warning, a towering, muscular bandit burst onto the scene, attempting to impress everyone with his bravado. He boldly announces his intention to put the bounty hunters in their place, as he battles fiercely against the escorts. The restless spirits of his deceased companions, still echoing with traces of darkness, murmured the name Whisper to him. Through their haunting voices, they revealed that the man was called Ego and had once been their superior. In mournful tones, the spirits pleaded for their former leader to accompany them into the realm beyond life. Wondered aloud whether this intimidating figure was actually the leader of their stronghold. The demonic spirits assured him that it was true, repeating their insistence that he should bring the man along with them. The boy eagerly fulfilled their request without a moment's pause, preparing himself to take on the bandit ex-boss completely. Advanced with a steady calmness, while the surrounding spirits intensified their cries, repeatedly chanting his name as if urging him onward. The former leader of the bandits visibly resented being addressed in that way, yet before he could voice any real objection, something interrupted him. The boy forcefully slammed his opponent onto the ground. A wave of terror washes over the ex-boss as he spots the bodies of his fallen comrades, their lifeless forms still suspended from the spear. The fear grew stronger as the voices echoed his name again and again, insisting that he follow them into the afterlife. The man collapses as genuine tears streamed down his face. All he could see ahead was a demon striding toward him. As the spirit repeated Ego's name a third time, an unusual and sinister energy suddenly burst forth from. A shadowy claw swept through the air, slicing the bandit's throat just as the spear arced toward him. Whenever he hears a name repeated 3 times in this manner, he gains the power to dispatch that soul straight to the underworld. Ego is pulled helplessly into the afterlife, his terrified screams echoing as his fate unfolds just as expected. The boy reflects on the amount of time that has passed since he last relied on the cursed ability. With that idea lingering in his mind, he drifts back to distant memories of being thrust into a perilous scouting assignment solely due to his inexperience. His hands became ragged and bloodied, marked by deep cuts as he struggled up a sheer cliff, risking everything for survival. A wave of resentment washes over him as he remembers being deceived by those who claimed that joining the army would put an end to his hunger. Despite everything, he endures pain just as he had during his days in captivity. He pauses at the brink, drawing in deep breaths to regain his composure. After a moment, he pushes himself upright once more. He abruptly becomes aware of an intense, ominous energy rising up behind him. As he glanced back over his shoulder, a large shadow came into view, its eyes shining with an eerie red light. The frightening scene almost makes him lose control from fear. His thoughts race wildly, unsure whether he's facing a tiger or a wandering spirit, but he resists the urge to glance back and quickly hurries away. He makes a desperate attempt to flee, haunted by the realization that he has stumbled upon something he should never have witnessed. Fear overwhelms him, and his mind races with the hope that death won't claim him so soon, especially before he's had the chance to marry. Inside his head, a frantic voice shouts, urging him to keep moving forward and insisting that he must not look back under any circumstances. Suddenly, an unexpected voice emerged from behind, questioning him about his true intentions and what he hoped to accomplish after enduring so many hardships throughout his life. Hidden within the darkness, the creature mocked his very being, comparing his worth to that of a mere insect crawling on the ground. Following its taunts, the entity tempts him with a risky proposal, assuring him that this gamble could let him escape his miserable existence forever. Summoning his courage, turns around at last and insists on knowing why he should believe such a promise. Hidden in the darkness, the shadowy figure, resembling an aged man, noticed the boy's boldness in speaking up. Amused, he smiled and wanted to know what the boy was called. When revealed his identity to the other person, he introduced himself as. The elderly man's expression remained unsatisfied, as he insisted that the young man respond once more. The boy repeated himself, but the geyser questioned him once more, prompting the boy to raise his voice and shout his name, his frustration becoming more obvious. Upon hearing the name repeated for the third consecutive time, the geyser with demonic eyes reacted. In the blink of an eye, he bridges the gap between them. With just one hand, the figure hoists the boy off the ground. The boy began to feel anxious, realizing that he hadn't noticed the geyser shift at all, and suddenly he was struggling to breathe as something tightened around his neck. The old man decided to make the boy his apprentice, giving him no chance to refuse. He went on to explain that if the boy ever wished for someone's death, all he needed to do was have their name spoken aloud 3 times. If follows those instructions, he will manage to kill his targets regardless of the outcome. On that fateful day, his master, feared throughout the martial arts community as the embodiment of wickedness, grants sinister powers. The individual had gained a notorious reputation under the name Blood Demon Coco. As he moved forward, dispatching each bandit with merciless efficiency, his attention suddenly shifted when something unusual caught his eye. He notices that his thoughts are sharper and more focused than they have ever been. He reflects on the supernatural abilities that has bestowed upon him. She recalls that the present was not yet finished. The origins of the power were intended to burrow deep within him, weaving through his very bones and casting a haze over his thoughts. Strangely, instead of feeling numb as expected, he now experiences a sense of clarity and renewed energy. He directs his attention to his own body, trying to figure out what might be different. It quickly becomes clear to him that the Miao tribe's unique way of breathing is connected to what's happening. As a young boy, he had mastered that technique well before becoming a soldier. He grows convinced that this way of breathing is what preserves his sanity. He remains composed and clear-headed, unaffected by the confusion that would normally cloud his thoughts. Had cautioned that his sanity would slip away unless he gained control over the demonic power. Now that he had succeeded, a subtle smile of accomplishment appeared on his face as he imagined how his master might react upon discovering this. At that moment, the members of the Bureau came up from behind. They expressed deep gratitude for being rescued from such a dangerous predicament. Shu Aker, the commander known as the Tiger Pit Sex's top escort, looks at him, her eyes filled with unease. She had witnessed him swiftly defeat the bandits in rapid succession, never once stopping to catch his breath, and simply being near him made the air feel heavy and oppressive. Unwilling to lose the support of someone so formidable, respectfully requests that he continue to provide his assistance for a while longer. He immediately dismisses her without hesitation. She implied that the conversation could end if the other person had nothing further to add. As he began to walk away, hurriedly intercepted him, holding out a gleaming golden token. He clarified that the item was property of the Tiger Pit Sex Enforcement Bureau. Possessing it would guarantee him a warm reception as a distinguished guest in any place touched by their power. Accepted the token, his thoughts drifting to the Tiger Pit sect. Although everyone recognizes them for their honesty, he is also aware of the sad truth that they will disappear in only a few years. Despite everything, he takes it right away, showing no sign of doubt. Gathered her followers and began to walk away, assuring him that she would see him again after their task was finished. She encouraged him to take it easy until then. Before departing, the boy requests a horse with complete confidence, showing no embarrassment. Despite knowing its reputation for being difficult, he selects the most ill-tempered horse in the stable. Feels anxious because even experienced riders have a hard time handling that creature. As she glanced over her shoulder, she noticed that he was already sitting atop the horse. To her astonishment, the animal remained perfectly still, so frightened that it began to tremble uncontrollably and even urinated from sheer terror. As observed the scene, she became even more certain of her earlier suspicions. The person standing before her was far from an ordinary fighter, but rather something monstrous hidden behind a human appearance. Meanwhile, her vice commander shot her a knowing grin, playfully suggesting that she might have developed feelings for the man the moment she saw him. Cheeks flushed with fury as she fixed a sharp glare on him, her fingers curling around the hilt of her sword, while she made it clear through her stance that she questioned whether he valued his life. The conversation among the group turns to skill with the spear as they wonder whether he could be a member of a famous family known for their expertise in spear fighting. Immediately rejects the suggestion, insisting that what she witnessed could not have been any form of martial arts. Drawing from her own past encounters, she could tell without a doubt that the move was a spear technique used by the military. Despite everything else, what truly disturbs her is witnessing someone so young demonstrate skills far beyond his years. She starts to wonder if belongs to an influential military family and considers the possibility that he might be embarking on a warrior's quest, a path often taken by those who have just completed their training. Although his personality is harsh and self-centered, what sticks with her most is his character. Even when there was no benefit for himself, he had put his own safety on the line to save them. The unusual blend of power and inner conflict captures her interest, prompting her to purposefully direct him toward the territory of the Tiger Pit sect. Quietly wishing within herself, she hopes that once he discovers the looming crisis threatening the sect, he will intervene and rescue them from the sinister plans of the Black Tao sect. At the same time, the boy focused his attention on the quivering horse, chastising it firmly and insisting that it cease urinating. He warns that he will chop it down if it ever dares to dirty the earth once more. With this matter resolved, his thoughts wander back to the Tiger Pit sect, bringing to mind a particular individual named. He thinks about where the man could be at this moment, and imagines the difficulties he might be facing. His mind wandered back to the past, where he remembered how had been the first person to reach out in friendship when he entered the military. The memories of those tough first days surfaced, filled with the unkind treatment he received from the older soldiers. The seniors insisted that newcomers such as him wait on them at mealtime, making sure the rookies served dinner before they were allowed to eat themselves. Confidently stated that he was unfamiliar with any rule like that. The bully threatened him, making it clear that if he wanted to stay out of trouble, he needed to remember the warning from that moment forward. Tension hung in the air, suggesting that the situation was on the verge of becoming violent. Stepped forward without a hint of doubt, confidently exposing the seniors' deception and declaring that their statements were utterly untrue. He pushed the challenge even further, boldly inviting them to claim his share as well, pointing out that he was also a newcomer. The older student's face flushed with anger at the younger boy's refusal to back down, and he lashed out in an attempt to hit him. Snatched up a potato and tossed it straight at his face, hitting him directly. With a sly smirk, he taunted him, suggesting that if he was truly starving, he should go ahead and eat it. Without restraint, he unleashed a rapid barrage of punches on the senior, striking repeatedly until the older man collapsed to the ground. He threatened that if it happened again, he would shatter every tooth in the man's mouth. Taken aback by the unexpected display of courage, quietly urged him not to get involved. Passed the potato to him, explaining that eating it was necessary if he wanted to stay alive in this place. That heartfelt act signaled the start of their bond, with letting know he was his immediate upperclassman. From there, a conversation blossomed between them. At that moment, who had gone by the name at the time, introduced himself and politely inquired about the senior's name in return. His thoughts wandered back to the terrifying moment on the cliff when the blood demon almost strangled the life out of him. Had been looking for him and showed up right as the frightening moment unfolded. Acting quickly, he warned to let go and made it clear that he would shoot a flare and summon reinforcements if his demand was ignored. Gave him a sly, confident smirk. Lost his grip on the edge and plunged down the cliff, his body rolling uncontrollably as he fell. This caused to become angry. The demon nonchalantly stated that he had completed the task as requested, implying that ought to be content with the outcome. Hesitated with the flare gun poised, her finger trembling on the trigger just as interrupted her. At the brink of disaster, halted his plunge by grabbing onto a sharp rock with trembling hands. Despite his precarious situation, he urged not to worry about him and insisted that she go on without looking back. Firmly expresses that he does not plan to harm either of them. Rather than resorting to violence, he offers a risky proposition, if they are able to find and deliver a rare herb with healing properties for his injuries. He vows to give them the power they need to endure the harshness of this unforgiving world, left without any alternatives. And though hesitant, eventually gave their consent. From that moment, they started training under his guidance. Introduced them to the existence of mysterious creatures called the unrestrained demons and began instructing them about these beings. He goes on to clarify that these beings originate from human souls, which succumbed to demonic corruption after being consumed by tigers. Stripped of their humanity, they roam as tainted phantoms, eventually serving their master with unwavering loyalty. At this moment, reveals his notorious fighting style, naming it the art of the unrestrained demon. He goes on to clarify that this technique operates under the same bizarre principles. It is divided into 3 primary phases: compression, tempering, and transcendence, and each phase contains 10 distinct levels. During the initial phase, an individual can emit demonic energy in a steady flow, much like water pouring from a stream, whereas the second phase causes a person's blood to become poisonous. Their master, with a composed demeanor, explains that he has reached the 4th level of the ultimate stage, a place where the concepts of right and wrong have lost all significance to him. Once had burdened everyone with this disturbing information, he at last revealed exactly what he wanted. He instructed them to depart and retrieve the herb he desired, promising to share his knowledge in return. Their master proceeded to disclose the name of the herb, identifying it as the rare 100-year snow ginseng. Insists that a treasure like that is far out of their grasp. The person wonders if their master might at least assist by unlocking the vital pathways within their bodies, known as the Ren and Doom meridians, that allow chief energy to circulate. Much to everyone's astonishment, gives his consent. Iko wastes no time in proposing that be the one to take the lead. He instructed the boy to unlock his meridians and go search for the necessary herb, planning to continue collecting plants himself until it was time for his own task. In an effort to add credibility to his strategy, he lightens the mood by claiming that taking the second turn is always the more challenging task. Not sensing any reason for doubt, agrees to the suggestion and heads out on his way. The narrative then moves to depict his homecoming, as he limps back, his body pierced by numerous arrows. Despite resembling a human pincushion, he had managed to collect every last herb. Clinging to the belief that things might improve, he forces himself to visit their master's residence. He stands motionless, stunned by the sight before him. Severed head rests at a distance from his lifeless body. The person responsible for his death was revealed to be himself. His friend, suffering from serious injuries, falls to the ground in exhaustion. Hurries over, clearly alarmed, insisting on knowing what is going on. Had realized from the start that had no intention of sparing their lives. Faced with this grim truth, the group understood they must attack before they became victims themselves. Understood at last why had pushed him aside before. Observing closely, he noticed that meridians were damaged beyond healing. It became clear that had decided to face the master alone, willing to sacrifice himself if necessary. Tears rolled down his cheeks as he wept for. Despite her weakness, managed a faint laugh and reassured him, insisting he shouldn't blame himself. She said that ending the life of an old person like her wasn't something he needed to worry about. He goes on to share the reasons behind his decision to rescue. He reveals that he alone remains from the once powerful Tiger Pit sect, its final survivor. Remembered the time when mentioned that both the sex head and the lady were kind individuals. From that moment forward, started to think of as a member of his own family, touched by the gentle way spoke about his parents, a kindness had never experienced from anyone else. As drew his last breath, he expressed his happiness at having crossed paths with. He urges the other to seek revenge if the opportunity ever arises. As he speaks, his voice grows weaker and eventually disappears. stands helpless, forced to witness as his friend's life fades before his eyes. The narrative returns to the present timeline, showing astride a trembling horse that seems on the verge of collapsing from fear. In that moment, silently promises himself to prevent resentment from taking root in this world to which he has been transported. His top priority becomes stopping the downfall of the Hu clan no matter what it takes. He also remembers recently rescuing the Tiger Enforcement Bureau, the group that supported them financially. He begins to sense that the future could be shifting in surprising and unforeseen directions. Gestured toward a man standing close by, signaling him to gather some information. The portly man's face flushed with irritation when he heard the informal tone, and unable to contain his temper, he lashed out in an attempt to hit the other person. Seized the other boy's head with a grip as firm as if he were holding a piece of fruit, demanding that he begin speaking immediately. Wondered aloud whether the manor was owned by the Tiger Pit sect, a group led by and accompanied by Lady. The terrified man confessed that statements were all true. Afterward, inquired whether their child was called. The injured man shook his head and insisted that this was not the case. Starts to question whether his journey to the past has altered the present world around him. Although many details remain familiar to him, he decides to emphasize his warning to ensure it is understood. He seizes the man by the collar, warning that if he discovers still alive within the sect, there will be consequences. He planned to come back and defeat the other boy once more, simply for his own amusement. The man became flustered and hurried to clarify that while statements were correct, there was one exception. He firmly claims that the Tiger Pit sex leaders have no son whatsoever. Rather than having a son, the family has just one child, a daughter. When he hears the revelation, disbelief washes over him. The realization dawns that his close companion, whom he had always considered just one of the boys, was in fact a woman all along. The truth stings, leaving him reeling with surprise. The shocking news overwhelms the boy, causing him to stand frozen in disbelief, unwilling to accept the truth that has just been revealed to him. Later on, he continues to doubt whether is genuinely a woman. Determined to confirm the truth, he seeks undeniable proof. He believes that presenting the golden token would guarantee his entry into the Tiger Pit sect, yet he knows doing so would expose his true identity and destroy his undercover mission. Several days passed before he found himself running late to his shift at the Tiger Pit, where he worked at the sex tables. In that moment, a plump man known as Wu shouted angrily at the destitute boy. Yes, had deliberately chosen the life of a vagabond as part of his disguise. Regardless, Wu chose to discipline him for his repeated tardiness by assigning him the unpleasant task of cleaning up heaps of horse manure. Once inside, he instructed the boy to tend to the horses and clean up all the manure, firmly reminding him that this work was still far preferable to surviving on the streets. The young man turned to him, wanting to know if he understood everything that had just been explained. The boy locks eyes with him, his gaze unwavering and intense. He claims complete ignorance regarding Wu's ramblings, and at that moment, Wu comes to the conclusion that he is dealing with someone whose mind is hopelessly deteriorated. He raised his voice, urging the boy to approach his responsibilities with greater dedication, reminding him that the section leader had shown compassion by giving someone in his situation a chance. At that moment, a horse suddenly crashed through the fence, startling everyone nearby. Without a hint of hesitation, he delivered a ruthless blow to the man's knee, showing no compassion. Questioned in his mind how such a terrifying horse could have appeared out of nowhere. At that moment, an irritating laugh reverberates around him. The arrogant young heir of the family gazed at Wu with a look of disdain, as if Wu was beneath him. Before departing, the man instructed the wounded worker to tend to his horse and make sure it was fed. At the same time, several other stable boys lifted Wu and took him away. He recalls that once revealed her clan's downfall was caused by his own, which fuels his determination to seek vengeance. At that moment, the Tiger sect leader, who was also his father, made his entrance. He observed the young member of the clan and noted with some surprise that the boy was much younger than he had anticipated. His father demanded that the troublesome boy explain why he had shown up. The despicable man responded with an unsettling smile, revealing that he had a single reason. He hopes to catch a glimpse of the woman he will one day marry. Upon hearing those words, his father firmly states that he has no recollection of ever allowing his daughter to associate with someone from the clan, whom he regards as beneath her. The child insists that gossip has already spread, claiming he is certain to wed the following year. His father questioned whether had started the rumor himself in order to damage the tiger's reputation regarding their sexuality. Jiao Han found the idea amusing, since he could never stoop so low simply to pursue. Without warning, made an entrance at that moment. The boys stand in stunned silence, captivated by how beautiful she is. She urges them to leave her family alone and suggests they direct their attention toward someone else instead. Hunt attempts to intimidate her, bringing up the gossip that has been circulating. Remained by her father's side, her resolve unwavering as she insisted that the man depart, unable to even consider the idea of becoming his wife. Informed the girl that her family was on the verge of financial ruin, warning her that her sense of pride would soon collapse as well. He chooses to leave and return on a different day, remembering that he has business to handle at the brothel. As they were leaving, his assistant remarked to himself that she looked even more attractive than the stories had suggested. The young master admits that this is precisely the reason she remains constantly on his mind. He boldly claimed that her beauty was so extraordinary, whole countries might fall apart in pursuit of her. She boldly declared that it was unfortunate someone as flawless as her belonged to the lowly tiger pit sect. As soon as they returned to their horse, the young member of the clan seized the reins, announcing that it was time to head to the ladies' district. Despite his efforts, the horse stands stubbornly still and does not move forward. As the minion goes to inspect it, the horse collapsed instantly, white froth bubbling from its mouth. The force of the impact knocked the young master down to the ground. As the pair grew frustrated over the absence of the stable boys, unable to find them when needed most, the hero remained hidden, silently observing from behind a nearby corner where no one noticed him. Using a flawless method, he extracts the horse's liver without leaving any evidence behind, ensuring that no one will ever discover what he has done. He fixes his gaze on the member of the clan, the one behind's tragic destiny. She explained to him that the tiger pit sect had been wiped out during a power struggle against the clan. It turned out that Tai Han had orchestrated the entire situation from behind the scenes. As a result, she grew to despise her once lovely face, and in desperation even burned it herself. The boy becomes consumed by anger, which drives him to set his scheme for revenge into motion. As night fell, he wandered by himself along the empty streets, eventually reaching a store that sold farming equipment, its entrance marked by a large X painted across the doors. The young man stepped into the shop. The owner, seated inside, looks at him and inquires about his identity. He tells them his name is. The owner responds by saying he doesn't know who the man is. The intoxicated amputee insists that the owner should look for another person, explaining that he left that life behind years ago. Suddenly landed on the table in front of him and instructed him to craft a basic hammer, specifying the precise measurements to the inch. The blacksmith, who had been drinking, reeled back in surprise at the unexpected news. The person's expression turned serious as they realized that a hammer of those particular dimensions was never intended for driving nails. Responded in a frosty tone, insisting that he never stated any intention of using it to hammer nails. The man proceeds to inquire whether there is anything more the other person would like. The boy requests that he craft a personalized spear, too. Upon hearing the request, the man tapped the weapon at his left side and announced that he required a full day to hone the blade of his prized creation. The boy wonders aloud if the man possesses any objects that are both tiny and pointed. The owner slammed his fist down, shattering the table where the hero sat and exposing the steel spikes hidden inside. He declared his intention to claim everything for himself and announced that he would return later to collect it all. The owner doubts that a boy living on the streets has enough money to pay for it. He stood tall and assured, inviting the other to test his abilities. The man wonders aloud whether it's possible to revive his deceased daughter, reaching out to make contact with him as he speaks. Believing that he is a spirit. Once the man is certain that he is not encountering a ghost, tears well up in his eyes as he confides in that avenging his daughter by destroying the villains from the black would finally bring him peace. The hero agrees to the request without hesitation. The man pauses for a moment, carefully making sure he understands what the black is. The boy insisted that learning their identities was unnecessary. Because he is on the verge of wiping them from existence, the situation has reached a critical point. He proceeded to inquire whether the blacksmith possessed any poison, and if there were tasks that needed to be completed. The disabled man wondered aloud whether anyone truly believed such ridiculous items had a place in a blacksmith's workshop. Despite his doubts, he handed over a bare pelt and a sealed jar containing what the Miao clan claimed was their unique poison, a substance he had never tried himself. The boy twisted open the jar and quickly noticed that the poison inside was of poor quality. He informed the man that he had been thoroughly deceived. He accepts the items anyway, thinking he might find a purpose for them, and mentions that he plans to gather the rest of the things tomorrow. As he was leaving, he notices a hefty bone, the kind the old man usually relies on to handle animals. Thinking it might be useful until proper weapons are finished, he chooses to bring it along. The blacksmith believes himself to be a sort of spirit. It made no difference to him, as his only concern was seeking justice for his wronged daughter. Later on, as he arrives directly at the entrance of the black sex's main headquarters, the non-playable characters made an effort to block his path. He swiftly defeated every opponent, striking them forcefully with his massive bone. In his previous life, after allowing half of his enemies to escape, they eventually returned and caused him harm. Determined not to let history repeat itself, the hero resolves that none of his foes will get away this time. He moved with a steady composure, stepping over the lifeless bodies of the NPCs he had just killed. The sudden commotion draws the 4 elite members to the area right away. None of the unsightly warriors can fathom that the trespasser before them is merely a young boy, so they prepare themselves to teach him a lesson for disturbing their rest. Believing the boy to be nothing more than an average troublemaker, the Elite 4 launch their assault against him. However, they are taken aback by what unfolds next. None of the opponents could challenge him. He took down the first attacker with a swift upward kick to a vulnerable spot. He reached out and drove his fingers into the second one's eyes, blinding the enemy with swift, brutal force. Upon witnessing the scene, the remaining pair quickly rushed in his direction. Without hesitation, he hurled the long bone with precision, striking one of them squarely in the chest and ending the threat instantly. Once he was done, he completed the third task as well. The final person loudly declared his intent to cause severe pain, making it clear that he would not show any mercy. The boy couldn't help but laugh at how upset the thieves were now that someone was taking from them. He wonders to himself what could be causing the man to become so irritated over something so minor. He planned to take everything they owned, leaving nothing behind. Upon witnessing the scene, the bald man recoiled in fear, his thoughts racing with confusion about the stranger's identity, as he had never encountered anyone who fought with such relentless ferocity. He believes the boy to be a monster, having witnessed him wipe out the entire black, using only a horse bone as a weapon. Watching the other man in motion sends a chill racing along his back. Despite his fear, he gathers his resolve and chooses to attack him regardless. With just one swift and powerful strike, the boy launches his opponent through the air. Barely clinging to life, the bald man weakly wonders aloud about his own identity and desperately tries to discover who is responsible for sending him. He explains that the blacksmith ordered him to eliminate every one of them. Upon realizing that their downfall was caused solely by a disabled blacksmith hiring an assassin, the bald man's eyes widened in disbelief. Without hesitation, he brought his enormous bone down for a decisive finishing blow. After erasing every trace, the black dowel drained away, leaving nothing behind. The young man departs, silently calculating that the demise of the 4 elites ought to suffice as compensation for the weapons. The setting transitions to the imposing Black Dao main building, where a representative from the clan approaches to deliver a report directly to the sect leader. Both and his father burned with anger over the collapse of their scheme. Irritated by the situation, the messenger lashed out at the leader of the Black Dao with harsh words. He believed that, by sending his own troops in disguise as forest bandits, he could have claimed the stolen items along with the rewards promised by the clan. As soon as he brings up their inability to deliver the required tribute to the sinister alliance, tension fills the air. The leader of the Black Dao begins to perspire nervously, slammed his fist onto the table, overwhelmed by frustration after his plan failed disastrously. The most troubling aspect was that he remained completely unaware of the mastermind responsible for everything. The messenger continued insistently, expressing that it would have been wiser for him to deploy his strongest warriors right from the beginning. Leader immediately turned the accusation around, criticizing him for failing to mention just how extreme the security measures were surrounding the tiger. Upon hearing those words, Scarface responded by glaring menacingly his eyes cold and intense. Unsure whether the elderly man truly intends to shift the blame onto him, he fixes a determined gaze on the old man, silently warning that his entire family faces ruin should he make another mistake. He shouted once more, insisting that the stubborn troublemaker would never be content until he managed to capture. Leader's anger boiled over, causing him to lose control and yell at the man, demanding silence. Without warning, the two men quickly shifted their attention toward the direction where a startling noise had erupted. The sect leader stood in disbelief, wondering how anyone could have reached the entrance despite the presence of 4 elite guards. Both of them began to perspire heavily when a strange figure suddenly emerged behind the door. As soon as the door bursts open, 4 heads tumble inside, scattering across the floor like stray bowling balls. Terror gripped both men as they caught sight of the severed heads belonging to the distinguished elites. Scarface's face grew tense with fear as beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. The thought crossed his mind that the person attacking him could truly be a formidable master from the Orthodox sect. Shaking with fear, the young man insisted that he belonged to the clan and having any connection to the Black. The boy's frustration grew so intense that he sank his teeth into his own lip, causing blood to trickle down. The character then forcefully expelled the substance, aiming it directly into his eyes. The young man, visibly bewildered, insisted again and again that he did not belong to the Black Dao, his eyes glowing with a fiery red intensity. It was explained that the blood belonging to someone who practiced demon arts was incredibly toxic, functioning much like a deadly poison. The boy took pleasure in seeing the guy struggle, believing that the pain in his veins must sting even more than pepper spray. Following that moment, Scarface lost control of his temper and violently attacked with his sword, aiming at his opponent. He effortlessly avoided the attacks, noticing they lacked the strength shown by the 4 elites. A crimson haze started to swirl upward from his weapon. As he unleashed his demon arts, Scarface immediately understood that he was up against a demon. The man made another attempt to strike, but his opponent quickly leaped backward to avoid the attack. A precise blow cut straight into his shoulder. The impact of the blow was so powerful that nothing remained except a smear of ketchup staining the ground. At the same time, the group's leader struggled to keep his composure as he witnessed a being so wicked it shattered any distinction between right and wrong. It astonishes him that a demon has appeared at his very own door. The leader of the Black Dao understands that trying to reason with such a creature is hopeless. The elderly man, however, was not out of options. As had been locked in combat, the old man had quietly inched backward, preparing his next move. At last, he reaches out and activates the button, setting in motion the arrival of the evil alliance. While he quietly slipped away, the boy mentioned his name, causing the elderly man to stop in his tracks, completely stunned. The old man is astonished that the boy, despite practicing demon arts, still seems lucid enough to hold a conversation. This left him questioning whether he had already reached the highest level of skill in his profession. Observed in awe, as effortlessly commanded his demon energy with remarkable precision. The Black Dao leader immediately drops to his knees, pleading desperately with the master for mercy and a chance to survive. As expected of a mediocre villain, he eagerly pledged to follow every command given by his superior. Turning to, he warned that failing to deliver the required tribute to the sinister organization would result in execution. The speaker goes so far as to imply that this issue could pose difficulties for two. The young man found himself admiring the old man's sharp wit, despite his age. Recognizing this, he issued a stern ultimatum. If the elder wished to survive, he must give up martial arts forever. Stands in shock, struggling to process the words that have just reached his ears. The protagonist insists that sparing the other's life depends on this single demand. The leader of the Black Dao clan comes to the painful understanding that giving up martial arts would be no different from surrendering his life. As a final attempt to defend himself, he unsheathes his sword and launches into a desperate struggle. Despite the situation, had anticipated that the timid person would never summon the courage to act. He attacks swiftly, timing his strike just as the geyser forces his slack sword free from its scabbard. In that moment, the elderly man senses through the boy's presence that he does not possess any mastery over the demon arts. The idea that someone inexperienced had the nerve to force him to acknowledge their skill filled him with intense anger. The young man grinned as the elderly man at last understood the reality of the situation. He felt relieved that events had unfolded like this, since it meant he could now confront his rival directly, using traditional methods. Without warning, a sharp agony surged through the Black Dao leader's body, making him suspect that might have covertly caused him harm. The boy expressed his gratitude to the man, appreciating how he had made the work enjoyable. The souls of the defeated Black Dao warriors surged forward, overwhelming their frightened leader with relentless force. Lashed out in a frenzy, hurling wild swings at the group, before focusing his assault on the lone target. Despite his efforts, the opponent stands little chance against the boy. The old man found himself unable to anticipate the incredibly fluid motions with which his opponent evaded every attack. As his life neared its end, understood that every motion he had mastered was designed solely for the defeat of his foes. After witnessing what happened, it seemed to her that no label suited better than demon. A powerful strike lands squarely on his chin, hurling him backward until he slams forcefully against the wall. Caught in the whirlwind, a single sheet of paper fluttered through the air near her. Evidence surfaced, revealing that the Black had been profiting immensely by trafficking slaves to brothels. The elderly man desperately pleads, hoping to be forgiven. Wonders to himself how many desperate people before her had pleaded with him in exactly the same manner. After making his decision, he began to dress himself in the old man's robes. He summoned flames and struck with his bone of justice. The protagonist then moved on to the second, blood-stained painting lying on the ground. Following this, they absorbed the soul of the Black sect leader. She grows enthusiastic at the prospect of finally acquiring one that is genuinely beneficial. At that moment, he notices quiet voices drifting in from outside the room. The moment he sets foot outside, he finds himself standing before a band of armed men, each one preparing for battle. He comes to the grim understanding that a gruesome and endless night lies before him. The following morning, events unfolded at the headquarters of the Tiger sect. Wu approached the stable boys and shared the exciting news that the Black sect had been completely wiped out, with their headquarters reduced to ashes. He clarified that the Tiger pit owed them a significant amount, but with those troublesome people now out of the picture, the debt no longer existed. The stable boys began to admire the mysterious individual responsible for everything that had happened. Wu raised his voice at the boy, demanding to know whether he had at last finished removing the horse manure. When the man with the icy expression stared back, the overweight individual began to hurl insults without any sign of respect. The boy even thinks about silencing him by offering his gold token. He chose to keep his discovery a secret until the situation with the clan was resolved, allowing Wu to discipline him however Wu saw fit. Just then, a gentle voice from the doorway interrupts, urging the overweight man to halt his actions. The sight of a familiar face left the hero utterly astonished. He found it hard to grasp how much more beautiful looked now compared to how he remembered her in his past life. She reminded the heavyset man to show patience toward the newcomer, pointing out that the recruit was still very young. The man, however, protested, expressing his belief that the boy would likely quit and disappear soon after starting. Believed that everyone had a destiny they were meant to achieve, which led the Tiger Pit sect to treasure all individuals who were linked to them. Recalls a time when once expressed those exact words. She mentioned to the heavyset man that there was a chance they would cross paths again in the future, and perhaps develop a bond as strong as family. Wu, however, felt irritated by her words. She reassures the young recruit that he is welcome to seek her help whenever others pick on him simply because he is new. Felt utterly overwhelmed by the warmth and kindness in her words. Although her appearance and voice had changed entirely, the unmistakable innocence in her eyes remained just as it once was. A wide grin stretched across his face. The hero assured her that if anyone ever bothered her, she could always come to him for help. And the standing at the back could hardly believe their ears after hearing his bold words directed at a noblewoman. Despite his words, just responds with a gentle smile and assures him in a quiet voice that she won't forget. Later that evening, the boy moved closer to a pile of hay that looked harmless, unaware that it cleverly concealed his entire arsenal of weapons underneath. He fastens the equipment securely and picks up his weapon. He begins his journey, driven by a desire for vengeance. At the headquarters of the Jaw clan, he darted through the main entrance with such stealth and speed that the guards remained completely unaware of his presence. He moved effortlessly through the garden, barely making a sound as he passed. He silently approached the patrolling guard from behind and drove his blade into the guard's neck, bringing him down instantly. Following that event, the hitman nonchalantly tucked the body out of sight just beyond the corner, seeming unconcerned by the glaring streak of blood left in his wake. He entered the room. Two girls felt completely safe, trusting the strict security measures that had been in place since the Black Dao incident had unsettled the entire community. At that moment, spots a pair of guards standing nearby. He sent an iron blade spinning toward the first one's foot. The sensation pierces deep within his soul. The man let out a cry of agony and staggered unsteadily. Entered the house as if everything were perfectly normal, then, without warning, delivered a blow that knocked the other person unconscious. The boy noticed the young man lounging nearby. Another guard, busy munching on a piece of stale bread, grew irritated with his companion, who continued to shirk his duties. He waits, but no one replies. The situation infuriates him. Power marched ahead with determination, intent on teaching his sluggish companion a lesson, only to realize it was dressed in a guard's uniform. However, he was stopped before he could reach him. Crimson tears began to stream from his eyes. The man suddenly collapses and dies instantly. As the rest of the guards approached, they discovered that he had been poisoned. Determined to find the culprit, they resolved to question the kitchen staff and secure the building to prevent anyone from leaving. It became clear that Still had another transformation yet to reveal. The whole activity served merely as a practice run, allowing him to try out the equipment that the blacksmith had meticulously prepared for him. Having completed his task, he resolves to erase the clan's name from the annals of history. Within the headquarters, one of the guards grumbled about how the heightened security measures following the Black Dao incident seemed unnecessary. His companion nodded in agreement, sharing his sentiment. At that moment, something unexpected happened. The boy bursts dramatically through the paper doors, making a striking entrance. Before they could comprehend the sudden attack, their necks were already slashed clean through. He ascends the staircase. A guard, noticing him dressed in uniform, approached and demanded an explanation for the commotion coming from downstairs, warning that the master was trying to rest. The guard's expression shifted to one of bewilderment, as he realized the boy was gripping a blood-stained spear rather than the standard sword he expected. The rest of the group immediately noticed when the intruder took him down with a single blow. Before they have a chance to sound the alarm, they are also struck down. Following that, 2 additional guards hurried into the room, puzzled by the fact that their fellow guards seemed unaware of an intruder making it so far into their stronghold, just as the previous guards had been. The group endures an agonizing pedicure, as their feet are scraped by sharp iron blades strewn across the ground. After ending their suffering, he walked into the master's chambers with a steady composure. Upon stepping inside, he immediately understands that the head of the clan is far superior to the leader of Black. When the old man noticed the boy's aggressive demeanor, he decided to remind him about basic courtesy, insisting that the boy should learn to knock before entering. Just then, stiffens, finding himself directly confronting the man responsible for the deaths of thousands and the torment that has turned his life into a nightmare. The elderly man wondered aloud about the reason for a late-night visit. Quickly counters by questioning whether the other person is actually. The geyser reacts negatively to the boy's disrespectful attitude, instructing him to show more courtesy before inquiring about his origins. He realizes that the young man isn't part of any honorable group, so he begins to consider each clan individually, trying to determine where the boy might fit. At the same time, carefully assessed his opponent, believing their match would be evenly matched, and introduced himself with composure as a member of the Tiger Pit sect. Is left stunned by the response, unable to comprehend how the Tiger Pit could have produced someone so monstrous. The elderly man insisted on knowing how he was linked to the clan, while confessed that he was merely visiting and had no deeper ties. Questioned whether the boy might simply be a hired fighter, or perhaps someone who worked with the horses in the stables. He simply ignored it, acting as if it had no importance. With a confident motion, he unsheathed his sword and mocked, suggesting that entering this place was as good as accepting his own doom before turning to see if would admit to it. The boy shut his eyes briefly, overwhelmed by the surreal experience of encountering this man. In a previous existence, the geyser lived a tranquil life as endured quiet torment until the end of his days. He was determined that, this time, events would unfold in a completely different way. Fueled by a fierce promise, grips his spear tightly and prepares to fight, his heart consumed by a desire for vengeance. The battle erupted, with him skillfully intercepting the old man's sword using his spear. Feels a surge of surprise from that alone. The character quickly takes a step backward. He fixes with a frosty stare, insisting on an explanation for whether magic was just performed. He could detect traces of clan's secret techniques radiating from him. Simply deflects, wondering aloud how such a notion even came about. Deep down, he's confident that his spirit power, now at the 9th level of the compression stage, makes him a match for this formidable elder. Both men gathered their energy, each radiating intense power as if competing to outshine the other. Maintained unwavering concentration, fully aware that their true advantage would come from who possessed greater experience. Once more, the pair engaged in a fierce confrontation. The elderly man intercepted the approaching blow, conceding that the attack showed some skill. In a swift motion, he knocked the spear aside, sparks scattering through the air as he mocked that such simple tactics would never be enough. The elderly man, his face etched with deep lines, squinted suspiciously as he tried to figure out strategy, noticing the fierce determination blazing in the younger boy's eyes. Bro remains completely unfazed, showing no reaction at all. Hesitated momentarily, just before the spear struck him forcefully across the face. Remains tense, not relaxing for even a moment. Only a handful of hair strands, stained with blood, fell to the floor. Soaked with perspiration, the elderly man whispered under his breath about how he had come dangerously close to death, the recent blow having grazed his neck. He attempted to dismiss his injury, insisting that he had nearly caught as well, pointing to the fresh cut along his lower body as evidence. The young boy's muscles stiffened as he realized he was about to face an experienced opponent, fully aware that the challenge ahead would not be simple. Hurled 2 projectiles in his direction. The geyser skillfully avoided their attacks, using his sword to deflect each one without effort. He effortlessly dodged a bone thrown his way, laughing as though he found the situation amusing. Expressing his curiosity about his teacher, he eagerly mentioned that he would be willing to make his own apprentice. The boy remains unconvinced, noticing the hidden intentions behind the old man's carefully chosen words. At that moment, lunges ahead with incredible speed while attempts to back away. Unexpectedly, the person stepped backward and collided with a lifeless body. He mutters bitterly about his misfortune, while the elderly man announces that the battle has already ended. With a swift movement, the blade sank deep into his chest, sending a spray of blood in all directions. Maintained a firm hold, a sly grin spreading across his face as he remarked on how impressive it was that the boy hadn't let out a single scream. He runs his hand over where a beard would be if he had one, then remarks on how far surpasses his own incompetent son. Because of this, he insists on having a capable girl nearby. The weakling was taunted about needing children before his time ran out, but he refused to let the jab go unanswered. He seizes the sword using only his bare hands, taking the old man by surprise. Taunted him, questioning whether he was truly unaware of how much time he had remaining before his life ended. The elderly man remains oblivious, his attention completely consumed by the startling realization that his sword refuses to move even the slightest bit. He suddenly realized what she had done, his eyes widening in shock. Managed to halt the blade's advance by catching it against his own ribs. He begins to suspect that the boy might have intentionally endured the hit to gain an advantage. At the same time, shows no intention of restraining himself. He openly declares his plan to announce exactly how many days remain for the old man. He addresses directly, using his name. The elderly man immediately begins to unravel, his composure slipping away as a wave of fear washes over him. He found it ridiculous that someone as strong as himself could be shaking with fear. Shadows slowly envelop the group while repeats the name once more. Became overwhelmed with anxiety. He struggled frantically to pull his sword loose. On the third call of name, a monstrous hand suddenly erupted from the darkness. The character extended their arm directly toward the old man. The elderly man's emotions overwhelm him, leaving him sobbing uncontrollably as he finds himself unable to speak. He released a piercing scream, his voice echoing from deep within as the sinister, clawed hands drew nearer and began to surround him. In that moment, the young man thrust his blade directly into his own heart, acting without a trace of doubt. Spat blood, his mind reeling with disbelief, as he tried to comprehend how someone so young could wield the terrifying power of murder-intent illusion magic. Responded with a chilling tone, dismissing the geizer's past fights as insignificant, comparing them to mere practice sessions in his eyes. He drives the blade in farther. The idea was conveyed that true fights to the death exist on an entirely higher plane. The torment he had endured before was far worse than anything he faced now, making this current battle seem insignificant by comparison. As his breathing grew faint, struggled to speak through his coughs, using his remaining strength to beg for mercy on his son's life. Raising his hammer above his head, the young man shows no mercy as he firmly rejects the plea. He smashes the man's head, bursting it open as easily as squashing a ripe tomato. The weapon was lifted, its surface slick and glistening as if smeared with ketchup. He taunts her, insisting that she will never have the chance to meet his unattractive grandchild while she is alive. As the battle came to an end, allowed himself to unwind, realizing he needed some time to regain his strength before continuing forward. At that moment, a surge of unease washed over him, alerting him that something wasn't quite right. As the character entered the inner room, he notices 2 steaming cups of tea on the table and begins to connect the dots. He suddenly becomes aware that another person has been concealed in this place the entire time. Without hesitation, he springs into action. With a powerful motion, he shattered the enormous pot into countless fragments. The scene revealed a frightened, immature man who hurriedly retreated, his voice trembling as he begged to stay away. The boy pressed his hand to his forehead in frustration, silently blaming people like this for the needless loss of so many lives. The man seized the boy by his hair, taunting him with a sneer. The question arose about whether possessing immense wealth and influence truly made him a hero. Despite his desire to speak, the old man's son found himself paralyzed by fear, unable to say anything at all. Receiving only silence in response, his lips curled into a frosty smirk as he locked eyes with the coward. He promised himself that he would turn this timid soul into a true star at last. With a chill in his voice, announces his intention to become an idol that very night. The following day, posters appeared all across the province, drawing people from all around to gather. According to the posters, both the Orthodox sect and the Black sect had fallen into corruption, prompting an unknown individual to take matters into their own hands and deliver justice, much like a vigilante. Curiosity spread among the people on the streets as they tried to figure out what was happening. Rumors spread quickly about a mysterious vigilante who had effortlessly destroyed both the Black sect and the clan. Ultimately, they let the matter go, feeling relieved that the dishonest troublemakers have finally been removed. Yet an unanswered question lingered in everyone's minds: who possessed the strength to bring down such formidable leaders? The focus moves to Wu as he informs his fellow comrades that, according to what he heard, the vigilante repeated his name 3 times before delivering the final blow. The workers grew uneasy as the rumor spread, quietly speculating among themselves that the vigilante could actually be the Grim Reaper in disguise. Wu mentioned that, in the end, the master of the clan broke down in tears, making everyone else even more frightened. At that moment, someone announced his arrival, causing the 3 friends to break out in a panic. At the same time, his mind wandered as she pondered the identity of the unknown vigilante who had sought justice for the Tiger Pit sect. Although those men were terrible people, she couldn't help but feel uneasy about rejoicing over their demise. She found herself puzzled, trying to figure out the identity of the mysterious individual and questioning the reason behind their unexpected support for her clan. In that moment, realization dawns on them. Had written in a letter that someone acting as a vigilante would arrive at the sect, bringing with them a gold token. Tries to recall if anyone matching that description ever appeared, but her memory holds no trace of such a person. At that moment, someone suddenly tugged on the reins of her horses. She suddenly returns to awareness, confused about her surroundings and wondering about her location. She gazes forward, her eyes widening in awe as a stunning lake comes into view, its beauty rendering her speechless. The girl faced, wondering aloud how he had discovered her fondness for lakes. The hero responds by reminding him that she had already mentioned it earlier. She felt confused because she had no memory of ever making that statement. The boy slipped into a daydream, recalling how she would often mention lakes whenever anxiety weighed on her. He takes several herbs from his pocket and sets them on fire. Smoke floated gently, spreading over the surface of the lake. His face lit up immediately as she recognized the item as insect repellent, something she constantly found herself needing during her trips to the lake. She smiled brightly and wondered aloud about whether he had shown this level of skill in his previous jobs. He drew inspiration from his poetic side, explained that whenever others embraced him as one of their own, he felt compelled to look after them just as warmly in return. She takes a moment to let his words sink in. She assured him that she would respect his privacy and not seek out his secrets. With a confident gesture, she reached out her hand, expressing that within the Tiger Pit sect, all members are considered family. His mind spiraled back once again, recalling the last moments he had experienced alongside his comrade in a previous existence. At that time, disclosed her true identity as the heiress belonging to the Tiger Pit sect. Previously, the hero had assured her that both the master and his wife were kind individuals. From that moment forward, she started to consider him a part of her family as well. At that moment, a booming voice interrupted the scene, drawing attention to the heiress as she openly held hands. The oversized Big Mac, clearly agitated, urgently announces the arrival of the escorts. Upon hearing those words, her face brightens with excitement, while remains standing awkwardly, unsure of what to do next. She pulled firmly on the reins of her horse. She hurriedly expresses regret for ending their conversation so soon, then extends an invitation to him for the celebration happening that evening. At that moment, she sprinted away, leaving Wu to hurry after her as he pleaded for her to stop. They observed as the figures faded from view. The boy allows a small smile to appear on his face as he quietly acknowledges that this way of living has its own charm, while behind him, Wu can be seen chasing after. The story jumped ahead to the scene at the banquet. In the lively room, glasses were lifted high as the crowd celebrated the enigmatic savior who had come to their rescue. The master encouraged the guests to keep drinking, insisting the festivities continue until none could sip another drop. A sudden commotion swept through the hall, disrupting the calm atmosphere. Meanwhile, the protagonist sat quietly, savoring his meal, unaware of the chaos about to unfold. Without warning, a firm hand came down on his shoulder, its weight unmistakable. Wu and his group pressed for an explanation, insisting on learning how he managed to approach the young woman so closely. Irritated by the situation, Wu quickly loses patience and snatches up all of the special food for himself. At last, confesses the truth. Just then appeared, her expression full of anger as she confronted the group, demanding to know if they were really planning to pick on the same way they had in the past. As soon as they sensed her icy, intimidating glare from behind, the bullies scrambled to invent excuses for their behavior. Realizing her efforts were pointless, she decided to stop trying with them. She offered a steaming dumpling, gently reminding him that he should have let her know whenever something was bothering him. Noticing his thin appearance, she becomes upset and insists that he should go directly to her if the heavier boy is keeping all the food for himself and not sharing. At that moment, her father's voice interrupts her. She reminded him to have a proper meal before departing, flashing a brief smile as she went. As soon as she left, the trio resumed their mockery, targeting him with their insults once more. Afterward, the group obeyed the instructions given by the young woman and began to feed him. Wu initiated the process by launching a boiled carrot directly at his head. Bro effortlessly evades the attack by tilting his head to the side. The trio, determined not to let their target escape unscathed, joined forces and charged at him, ensuring he would take a hit. Skillfully picked out the meat, effortlessly avoiding the vegetables with impressive agility. The scene shifted to his parents. The group's tension eased when they saw the escorts had returned unharmed. Grateful for their protection, they expressed their appreciation to Shu Aker, the lead escort, acknowledging her dedication. She remains modest, carefully served her tea as a gesture of respect, acknowledging the quality of her impressive work. Following the previous conversation, she inquired with regarding the visitor who possessed the golden token. Explains to her that they did not arrive. Upon hearing those words, a sense of disappointment washes over her. She felt grateful to the young man, whose extraordinary skill with a spear had been strong enough to defeat the forest bandits, who were secretly members of the Blackdow people in disguise. She longed for the chance to have someone with those skills guide her own team. Encouraged her to unwind and focus on having fun at the party. She points out to the head escort that anyone is capable of showing great caution. She found happiness solely through the power of her own resilience. The woman chooses to treat herself by sampling the unique beverage. At that moment, she becomes aware of some disturbance happening far away. He notices the boy from before, still holding a spear. The boy swiftly gestures for her to remain silent. A single, piercing glance from him clearly warns her to keep his identity a secret. The trio made another clumsy attempt to ambush him, but without warning, something unexpected happened. A surly man demanded silence from the group, insisting they remain quiet so he could eat his meal in peace. Wu's anger flared, and he sharply reminded the scruffy man that he should feel lucky the sect allowed someone like him to dine there at all. After being insulted, the man becomes determined to show Tubby what real respect means, yet he is stopped before he has the chance to act. Before the man could cause any lasting harm, the boy intervened. Mr. Homeless watched with admiration, acknowledging the young man's unexpected talent and expressing confidence that he would go far in life. Afterward, he instructs the oily Big Mac to express proper gratitude to the young boy for rescuing him. Without saying anything else, the person turns and leaves. He proclaims with enthusiasm how pleased he is to be enjoying a meal at such an exquisite banquet. He regretted that everyone was left with cold drinks during such a special moment. Wanting to help, he suggested heating them up for the group. He rested his fingers on the table in a relaxed manner. With a wave of magic, he warmed every drink in the room. He heats them so intensely that they transform into steam and vanish within moments. The hobo's lips curl into a self-assured smirk. Everyone gazes at him in utter disbelief, amazed by his unbelievable mastery over such powerful abilities. Upon witnessing the scene, his father questions the man's identity. He abandoned his disguise, exposing his true identity as a debt collector dispatched by the evil alliance. The character sought to establish authority over the Tiger Pit Master. He announces himself with pride, revealing his identity as the infamous demon known for wielding a staff. Once known as one of the dreaded twin demons, lost his reputation after being defeated in combat. Following his loss, he pledged allegiance to a different master and embraced a new purpose. His current responsibility involved gathering tributes from all the sects, and any group that refused to comply would be met with utter ruin. The chief looked over at him, wanting to know whether he was the one who had received the gold token from. She responds without hesitation, insisting that it isn't true and that the man is a complete stranger to her. The staff demon leisurely filled his glass with a drink. He noted that a considerable amount of time had passed since his last visit to this place. He speaks with a sharper edge in his voice, accusing the group of being involved in the recent problems within the sect, since they are the ones celebrating. The chief grew anxious, yet firmly maintained that they were not involved. Dismissed their worries with a casual gesture, assuring the group that there was no need for concern as long as they weren't hiding anything. At that moment, his behavior takes on an unsettling edge. The observer noted that his beauty surpassed anything the rumors had suggested. She attempts to disregard his persistence, yet he continues to insist. Someone mentioned that his downfall was blamed solely on her appearance. The demon let out a harsh, mocking laugh, remarking that someone as breathtaking as her was destined to bring trouble to Sector 2. Stepping nearer, he questioned what fate awaited defenseless beauties such as herself. He shocked everyone by suddenly spitting at her. The staff demon taunts her, suggesting that only disgrace awaits her in her current role. The chief lost his temper, unsheathing his sword as he pressed for an explanation of his actions. Confidently announces his willingness to give a fight if that is what is being sought. The staff-wielding demon mocked the chief, questioning whether the chief truly thought he stood a chance. The chief responds by explaining that he approaches this fight not with the mindset of a leader, but as a father who has just witnessed his daughter being insulted before a crowd. He told the demon to leave, but only grinned, clearly ready to challenge him to a fight on the spot. right before the pair can collide, called out to her father, urging him to lower his sword. She brushed the saliva away from her cheek. She expressed her gratitude to the demon for teaching her, and with a steady hand, filled his glass. Goryu mocked her, finding it ridiculous that she continued to work for the man who was causing her distress. Responded with determination, making it clear that her offer of the drink was not a sign of weakness, but rather an expression of her respect toward a master of martial arts. He grew overconfident, questioning whether she was making fun of him and implying that he saw himself as a powerful warrior flaunting his strength. She maintained her composure, insisting with sincerity that she was simply telling the truth, then refilled his glass with another drink. Gore couldn't hold back a sudden laugh that erupted from him. He brings his hands together in a gesture of unity. He pretended to apologize to the chief for his rudeness toward the chief's daughter, while at the same time instructing the chief to lower his sword. He moved closer to and quietly urged her to pretend, hoping to protect his own reputation. The chief hesitated before eventually sliding his sword back into its scabbard. The staff demon walked away, teasingly referring to Sharp and making a light-hearted remark about possibly marrying her. He suddenly stops, appearing to recall something important. As he turned back, he insisted that he couldn't depart with nothing, a statement that left the chief feeling uneasy. The staff demon abandoned his pretense and made it clear that the state of the offerings was irrelevant to him. Regardless of whether they were ruined, he still demanded that the tribute be delivered. He moved closer, his voice icy as he insisted that the chief repay the earlier favor he had shown. Quickly responds, questioning whether the demon is now demanding tribute from their group. Goryu attempted to brush off the situation with a forced laugh. The chief quickly responds, turning the question around and wondering whether he intends to demand payment from the clan as well. The sight of the rattles unsettled them, as he revealed he had lost his life attempting the same thing in that very spot. He then recalled that the Tiger Pit sect had come into wealth not long ago and proposed that, rather than anything else, they should offer some condolence money. The chief requested additional time so he could collect the necessary money and make the proper arrangements. Forcefully brings his hand down on the table, his voice sharp as he insists that they can't afford to waste any more time. Pressed a hand to his forehead in frustration, convinced that the clan was doomed without the necessary money, especially since seeking assistance from the clan was not an option. With no other choices remaining, it becomes obvious to them that their best chance is to hand over the money and pray for leniency. A short while after, a hefty sack filled with gold dropped onto the ground before the demon. Cautioned him, stating that, in return, he must promise not to harm anyone belonging to her sect. Goryu insisted that he was not a monster, yet a sly grin appeared on his face when he noticed the chief's murderous glare. Despite this tense exchange, Goryu willingly passed the money over to the chief. The demon ignores the gesture and casually tosses a gold coin to the other side of the table. He offers the item too, explaining that it serves as his way of making amends for what happened earlier. The girl inclines her head in a quiet bow, her expression tight as she struggles to keep her frustration hidden. He adjusted his straw hat, settling it back onto his head. The staff demon glanced back with a playful remark, insisting there was no need for anyone to walk with him, as the bright moonlight would guide his way. After some time had passed, the stable boys quietly exchanged hushed stories about the fearsome demon that haunted their thoughts. The boy with black hair remarked that fortune had been on their side, allowing them to settle the problem using money. At that moment, Wu suddenly entered the scene. He held a roasted chicken tightly against his chest and urgently sought answers about his current location. Both of them began to salivate at the sight, convinced that Wu had brought the treat just for them. Upon hearing those words, the heavy-set individuals stomped their foot on the ground and firmly declared that the meal was meant exclusively for. He lets his eyelids fall shut. As sweat poured down his face, he remembered the demon's claim that was destined to save him. He searches for his knight in shining armor, questioning his whereabouts. On the bridge, remained tranquil under the glow of the moon, quietly gathering aura as if nothing in the world could disturb his peace. After some time had passed, Goryu walked away carrying a sack filled with the gold he had stolen. He appeared satisfied with his own actions. He suddenly comes to a halt, stands before him. A sly smile spreads across the demon's face. He teased that, for a moment, he almost believed the boy was a creature from a nightmare. Once he realized it was the stable hand he had seen before, he insisted on hearing the reason the boy had trailed him to this place. Remains quiet. Cautioned him that pursuing revenge would lead to serious consequences. He needed to reconsider his actions, because never fell for such tricks, leaving no opportunity for anyone to seek revenge. Retorted at last, questioning whether someone had started their morning by eating crows. He charges directly at the man, insisting that his money be returned. The demon responded with laughter, recalling that the previous individual daring enough to utter such words had been the rogue Night King, 4 decades earlier. Moved swiftly out of harm's way, and then swept his staff through the air in a powerful arc. Found himself stepping back in response. He stopped for a moment, his attention drawn to the spear that was holding, clearly impressed by its craftsmanship. The person inquired about the name of the object. Explains that it remains unnamed. Let out a disapproving click of his tongue, expressing regret that such a well-crafted weapon would go to waste. Prior to this moment, he explained that his staff was once a spear. When the blade had been removed, he chose to continue wielding it as a staff, valuing the weapon for its construction from sturdy black iron. He often made light of the situation, claiming that if his weapon hadn't broken, everyone would be referring to him as the spear demon. His temper flared at those words. He insisted that regardless of its condition by the day's end, it remained a spear. With that, he added an even more cutting remark. The remark suggested that Gore looked the part now, especially since the once fearsome demon had lost all his power. The quick punch instantly erases the smug grin from Gory's face, prompting him to hurl a stream of curses at. Yet, in an unexpected moment. Lunged ahead with such force that he almost shattered his face in the process. The staff demon, voice laced with contempt, accused their opponent of cowardice for resorting to such an underhanded attack, then rushed forward without hesitation, leading with their head. He lunges forward, wielding his staff as if it were a spear. However, the young protagonist stands unfazed, his resilience setting him apart from others. He takes advantage of the bridge's structure, using it to disrupt the demon's footing and make it lose balance. Not hesitating for an instant, swiftly drew a handful of ninja stars and hurled them toward his target. Realizes he is far more timid than he believed, and effortlessly brushes them away. Despite everything, the hero presses on, enduring as venom launches toward him, its target set on the creature's eye. The staff demon flashed a sly grin as he turned his head, mocking for his relentless determination and labeling him as stubborn. He took another swing and taunted his opponent, questioning whether the younger boy was still bitter about what had happened before. Launched himself into an impressive series of rapid, twisting moves. He intercepted the falling poison with his foot as he moved, executing the action with cold, unwavering accuracy. He follows through by driving his foot straight into the demon's face, delivering a powerful and crushing strike. The staff-wielding demon recoiled, agony etched across his features as the poison burned his skin. Confusion clouded his mind as he tried to figure out the source of this unexpected attack. Suddenly, his eyes lost focus, and anxiety surged through him as everything around him became a blur. Goryu spun his staff in wide, frantic arcs through the air. Nimbly moved to the side, then aimed a swift strike at the demon's legs. The demon narrowly evades the attack and jumps back across the bridge. He stands upright, acknowledging to himself that he had seriously misjudged the tiger pit's ability to create such a formidable creature. Despite everything, he continued to grumble, insisting that it was completely illogical for them to have brought up someone in this manner. His way of fighting lacked any sense of polish or sophistication. He uses his whole body as a weapon without hesitation. With a sudden shift in demeanor, he made his intentions clear by challenging the hero to a fight and began powering up for the impending clash. He shifted into a combat stance, determined to personally pull the boy down to hell. Remains completely unfazed. He held his spear firmly in his grasp. He moves, adopting his own stance, ready for the fight ahead. The character mocks the demon, suggesting that he could truly be known as Sir Yaps-a-Lot. In utter silence, the two rivals faced each other, their eyes locked in a tense and dangerous standoff. At that very moment, a single leaf drifted into sight. Both of them surged ahead with all their strength, moving as fast as they could. The clash of their weapons echoed with intense power. A huge sphere of purple light burst forth, illuminating the entire bridge. Without warning, an arm broke loose and slammed onto the ground, sending a spray of red everywhere. Remained silent as the situation unfolded around him. The staff demon suddenly erupted into laughter. He sneered, believing that sacrificing his arm had been a harsh yet essential cost. The staff had already pierced straight through the young man's chest. Clutching his weapon with determination, the attacker announced his victory in a booming voice, as the hero lay completely still.